Hey y'all, it's Sam with Beautiful Wreath, and today we are going to make a video strictly on how to mesh this bad boy up. I'm going to show you the methods that I use, and hopefully you can use them too. So stick around if you're interested in learning how to do that. So again, I'm Sam with Beautiful Wreath. So let's just go ahead and get started. So if you've been following me for some time, you know that my preferred method, my preferred base of choice is in fact the 24-inch evergreen base from Hobby Lobby. It has 2 rings. It typically comes smushed just like this. You can't really tell that it has 2 rings, can you? We're going to go ahead and we're going to remedy that today. I surely hope I do a good job of keeping this in frame. So I like to cut off my tags first and foremost. All right, so now that we've got that done, the first thing I like to do, even before I cut my mesh, and we'll get into that too, is I like to take my base, and like I said, my preferred base is the 24-inch base from Hobby Lobby. If you wait until Hobby Lobby has them on sale at Christmas time, they are typically $13.99, and they usually will go about 50% off. I don't know, maybe in August, September timeframe. So they'll be half off of that. And then after Christmas, they go, like 70, 80% off. So you can really get a good deal there as well. So that's when I like to stock up on my bases for the following year. Just a pro tip for you all that like to work with these bases. Simply, you're just going to spread out the first. I'm going to try to do this backwards. Like I typically am right-handed, so I use my right hand on top. But because the camera is right here, I'm going to go ahead and try to use my right hand on the bottom so you guys can kind of see. But I just like to flatten out this bottom part where all of these pines are and just separate between these 2 rings right here. There's a ring right here on the top and there's a ring right here on the bottom. So I'm just going to separate them. All right. Now that they're separated, that's not it. You could totally just start adding your mesh. I like to go even further because this helps to make sure that your mesh, whenever you're putting it in, if you go one step further, it ensures that your mesh is put in evenly, or so I feel. Other designers may feel differently. This is the method that has worked for me. I have sold hundreds of wreaths. This is what I prefer to do. So once I've separated the top ring and the bottom ring, or the inner ring and the outer ring, you can use either one of those terms interchangeably. I start with my bottom ring or my outer ring, and I will just take my ties, my pine ties, that's what these are called, and I will basically just fluff them, some to the top and some to the bottom. Now, are you going to ask if I'm just undoing what I did? No, I'm ensuring that I have somewhere to put my mesh, because whenever I put my mesh right here at the base of this wreath, I'm going to use one from the bottom and one from the top to tie the mesh in. And we'll get to that in just a little bit, okay? So I'm just going to continue working. If you don't pull them to the top and you only pull them to the bottom, you'll see here that there's a hole. See what we've done so far? You can't see my hand through there, can you? I mean, right here you can, so we'll pull extra to the top. But you can't see my hand through where we have already moved them, can you? But you can see where I haven't moved them. So we need to address that all the way around, okay? So we're just basically moving these pine ties so that we can secure our mesh into our wreath. And it does not have to be perfect, y'all. It really doesn't. You just kind of want to, and I'm going kind of slow, just so you can kind of just see the movements of my hand. You can kind of get the gist of it. You just want to have some good coverage all the way around. You don't want to have big gaps. You want to be able to make sure that your mesh really has some pine ties to hold on to it, okay? So I'm going to try to work from this way. Again, I'm right-handed, so I typically work like this, but I'm going to try to do it like this so you guys can kind of see. So for this one, we're really not as worried about making it as perfect as the outer ring. We just kind of want to separate some of these ties and pull them up and just kind of, you know, fluff them out, separate them a little bit. We're going to do the bottom outside ring first. That's where we're going to put our mesh first. And then we're going to work our way to the inside top ring.
Ain't that right, guys?
So now that we've fluffed out our base, this is what it looks like, completely fluffed, right? So let me go ahead and grab one that's not fluffed. This is the flat. This is what we started with, right? Okay. This is what we started with, right? And this is what we have fluffed out. And it only took a couple of minutes to do it. And once you start and once you get used to it, it goes by really quick. It literally takes you a minute. My preferred method is to use 10-inch mesh, or sometimes it's like 10 and a quarter, 10 and a half, whatever. But it's typically a 10-inch by 10-yard mesh. I'm sorry, I don't have the SKU number or the little sheet for my gray mesh. However, I am going to use a 10-inch mesh. This is a navy blue mesh, and it is item number RE800219. I'm also going to be using this aqua turquoise color metallic foil, 10-inch by 10 yards mesh. It is RE130158. And again, if you go to craftoutlet.com, that's where I order the majority of my supplies, then it will pull right up if you put in that number. Okay, so I'm going to start off with my two gray mesh. And because these are, I use these in a different project, I'm just going to layer them on top of each other. And I typically, for the most part, when I'm working with 10-inch mesh, I like to cut my mesh about 20 inches, anywhere from like 18 to 22 inches. If I'm measuring out, I'll typically measure at about 20 inches. You can also use scissors if you want. This does not have to be perfect, but I like it to be as close as possible. I like to cut at 20 inches because I know I can get about 20 cuts, about 18 to 20 cuts if I'm cutting between 18 and 22 inches, depending on how much mesh actually comes on the roll. Sometimes it's 10 yards, sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. It just kind of depends. I also just want to give you a side note that whenever you have something like this, first of all mesh frays, especially when you're using scissors or a rotary cutter, and then you go to manipulate the mesh by either bunching it by doing a poof method or a cruffle or a ruffle or a cruddle, whatever you're doing, whatever method you're using, it's gonna fray. However, whenever you first take it out the package, I like to give it a good clean cut, just like this. So that way you're starting off with a very fresh edge. Okay, that's just a pro tip, as I like to call it. So now that we're finished cutting our mesh, we're gonna go ahead and start stuffing our base. I, for reference, have 14 cuts of each color. I have 3 colors. 14 cuts times 3 would be 42, right? What we want to do is we want to go ahead and take our first piece of mesh, whatever color you decide to start with, it does not matter, but we are going to start on the bottom outer ring, and we are going to do the Cruffle method. This is a very popular method. I don't know who started it. I don't know where it originated from. I don't know, don't care. It's my favorite method. I know a lot of the larger YouTuber, wreath maker, influencer people, teacher, coaches, all of them like to use this method as well. And so it is just the easiest for me. You do the easiest method for you. If it's poofs, if it is ruffles, if it is petals, if it, whatever it is, for this method, for this base, the way I do it, this is my preferred way of doing it. I'm going to teach you the way I do it. Okay. Now, I like to take my first piece of mesh. It does roll up on itself because that's naturally what it wants to do because it was rolled on a tube, right? So I typically can do this on my chest now. I used to have to use a chip clip. When I first started making wreaths and I first started this method, I would take a chip clip and I would roll it just a little bit. I would roll this area, I would chip clip this and then turn it over, and then I would roll this one and then start that way. That way I could make myself a little bow tie or cruffle the way it's supposed to be made. But since I have been making wreaths for quite some time, I have adapted and now I'm a lot quicker, and I basically am just making a little bow tie, right? It does not have to be perfect. However, I want to make sure that you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm literally stuffing the middle of this mesh piece. The center of this mesh piece is going to be all the way down in that base, and I'm taking 2 pine ties and I'm literally just twisting it in 2 or 3 good times, right? That's what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take my next piece. We're going to do our gray piece next. And I'm going to fold it in on itself a little bit and then crunch it in the center. That's what it looks like. Just looks like a little bow tie. I'm going to go as close as possible by grabbing a pine tie in between these 2 fingers. I'm going to go as close as possible to my first piece of mesh. I'm going to stuff it down all the way to the base and do the same method where I'm going to put it in between 2 pieces of pine and I'm going to wrap it around. Just, it's like you're tying a, it's like you're securing something. You're just basically securing the mesh into the base. Okay. We're going to go ahead and, if you want to try it where you hold it on your mat and you roll it a little bit and you just walk it up, walk your fingers up. This is what it looks like. You can do it where you either put it face down or you can face it up. It doesn't matter. I alternate a lot of times. And again, I like to hold in between my two fingers, the pine tie I'm going to use, and then in between my other two fingers and my other hand, that pine tie I'm going to use. So now I have two pine ties, and I just secure it tight. So it's not going anywhere. That bad boy is not going anywhere. Okay? And that's what it looks like. That is what the outside of our ring, the outer ring, looks like. Okay? Okay, so this is what we have so far. I've used all the mesh that I've cut with the exception of two pieces, because whenever I crush this into an oval, I'm going to put these two pieces in the center. I like to take my wreath and I like to basically just push down on itself. I like to use my body weight and crush it into an oval. And this is what it looks like now. So now it's not circular. Now it is an oval. Putting enough pressure on it. If it pops, sometimes these rings pop, the outside and the inside ring, one of them might break. It's okay. It doesn't matter. Your wreath is not going to fall apart because of that. Another thing I like to do, I used to always teach this in my classes, that I'll take an inside or inner ring and an outside outer ring tie, and I like to tie them together. Then you have this little extra stability. It just kind of gives it a little extra oomph, you know? I then like to take a 24-inch zip tie and I like to slide this in to the inner ring, not the outer ring, the inner ring, about halfway. Just kind of move it through the mesh. You kind of move it through the pine ties. It doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be straight. I just want my zip tie in there. It's not really even helping. I mean, it's going to help it hold its shape a little bit, but not really. That's not the point. I like to have a zip tie in there because I like to use it as an anchor whenever I start attaching things and I need something other than like the outer two layers to attach pieces to my wreath. And y'all will see later, once we start putting things in it, you'll see what I'm talking about. This is what it looks like. I don't think I need to fill in any spaces right now. I would prefer to just use these two pieces for my center. Any color pipe cleaner. I'm just going to take a blue because that's the closest color I have to the mesh that I'm using. And I'm tying it to my zip tie. This is what it looks like on the back. Just going to go ahead and separate these. All right, so I'm just taking these kind of roughly. They don't have to be perfect. I'm going to stick them in. I'm trying to go kind of slow so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. To clip the pipe cleaner off and make sure it's secured. And then I want to kind of pull out some of that mesh that I may have flattened while I was putting those two pieces in the center. Okay, friends, this is the part now where I like to go ahead and decide if I'm going to use this part as the top or this part as the top. And then once I decide that, because I'm working on a pine base wreath, I would like to do one of two things. I can take two pine ties and tie them together, making a little hole, like a little hanger, right, for their hook, their wreath hook. Or my new preferred method, and I'll tell you why, because sometimes, not always, but sometimes these are not super secure. And as you put things on this wreath, it gets heavy. It puts a lot of tension on these pieces. I prefer to take a zip tie, and I find where my center is. And these zip ties can typically hold up to 50 pounds. And this wreath is not going to be anywhere near 50 pounds, so I'm not worried about it. And it's inconspicuous. It's a dark color, just like the pine ties. And you can move it depending on what part of the wreath is center and what part, is off-centered, so on and so forth. Can you see that better? And that is what it looks like. That is what a full evergreen mesh base using the Cruffle method with 10-inch mesh looks like. So that will conclude this video. If you want to stick around and see what this is going to be, I'm going to use this pool noodle to make this particular wreath. I'm Sam with Beautiful Wreath. Thanks for stopping by. Please like, subscribe, share, support, comment, all that good stuff. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye.